For a while, this has been my SoT Thieves computer. Generally speaking, it does a job just fine. Though it's an AMD rig and AMD still has issues. And also, it kind of struggles from time to time. And I thought, why not upgrade to something a little bit more better? Or well, technically in this instance, it's going to be kind of a downgrade until I resolve the issue with the current upgrade. But I thought, why not see if I actually get any performance uplift in the current state it's in before I spend like I want to say $100 or so, or maybe $150, $250 it'll take to get this upgrade fully functional. This be the upgrade, an Alienware R7. The reason why I say it's currently a downgrade is because for some reason or another, the original owner of this Alienware put an R6 board inside it. Technically it works, though I lose the RGB of the case, and that's kind of one of the features of these Alienwares, next to just the general overall shape. And I only spent about $120. Well, yeah, I spent $120 on this board, on this whole system, but then I decided to buy 32 gigs of DDR4 since I had extra money from when I did a store return. So I spent a grand total of about $200 on this thing, and it's, again, mostly because of the RAM. But eventually I want to swap out that board for an R7 board. I may also want to swap out the AIO in this thing for apparently a Cooler Master AIO that could actually work in this system, but one thing at a time. And when I do eventually swap out the board, I am also planning to get an i7-8700K, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, an i7-8700K. What's this guy smoking? He's asking at $350 for an ancient ass processor when this guy right here is selling it for $170 on Amazon. That guy's fucking delusional. So with that said, I also need to swap out the board. I think I mentioned it before. The reason why is because, well, it's supposed to have an R7 board, and it's supposed to be an Alienware Aurora R7. And as far as I know, the R6 board in here can't actually support 8th generation. And also, like I said, the RGB currently doesn't work. So before I do the whole swap over on this case, I need to first get a benchmark on my current system, which of course is my Ryzen 5 1600. One thing should be obvious right out of the gate is I won't be able to do one-for-one comparisons because Sea of Thieves is always an evolving, changing game. Because as you can see right now, I spawned at Port Merrick, so at the very least I'm at one of the more demanding portions of the game, and currently right now about 80 or so FPS, and if I start moving around, it definitely goes into like the 60s and whatnot. It stutters from time to time, but generally speaking, it's holding itself just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out into the open sea and come back. Alright, and in open sea, I'm getting about 100 or so FPS. So I got a base game fort I'm going to go to, and I'm just going to be monitoring the frame rate and whatnot, and I'll just come back with a, I guess a normal or the average frame rate. But yeah, like I said, I don't know how I can really benchmark a game that's constantly changing, constantly not staying the same, but I can try my best. I guess the best way to really do this video is just to see how it feels from my point of view. With that said, I'll come back when I'm done with the base game fort, or if I encounter some fool I need to deal with. Alright, scratch that. I'm getting about 80 or so FPS right now, and I got a player boat I want to keg. So I'll come back if I win, if I lose, and I'll give a general idea what the frame rate looks like. Ironically, I had more FPS over on the fort than I do right now, or did when I spawned back to my boat. When I spawned back to the boat, I was getting about 90 or so FPS. Everything kind of back to normal. When it comes to I was dealing with the galley, frame rate was more or less about the same, like 90, 100 or so FPS, surprisingly enough. The galley wasn't even a fight. Why did I even bother? Poor galley. Of course, I get the base game fort done and this pile of shit pops up. With that said, frame rates were relatively fine. Lowest was around 37. Highest is around what you see right now. With that said, I am pretty stupid, and I should have just looked at the utilization of what I'm currently getting. And as you can see, utilization is perfectly fine. Then again, this game came out in 2018, so it doesn't fully utilize like 6-core processors and whatnot, I don't think that well. So theoretically, the i7 I have in my Alienware should be just fine. I'll probably lose like maybe 10 FPS. And if I only just lose 10 FPS, that's completely fine. But what I'm going to have to do is I am going to have to actually monitor the utilizations of what's going on, because that is also a part of how the computer is performing. So with that said, I'm going to get my base game slop sold. I'm going to try and do this because, well, why not? And come back with the Alienware after. Alright, done with that. Now to get the Alienware all set up. So one of the annoyances of this particular Alienware is that it only has a 480 watt power supply, which I could technically get away with, but I'm going to use a proper power supply, though I can't seem to find the actual bracket for this thing. So for right now, I just have it plugged in like that. The reason why I have it looking the way I do is because I don't even know if this thing actually will fire up or not. From what I've seen, it should fire up, or at least what I read, but this thing was in between the 24 pin. This goes to some type of GPU power on the motherboard. It is possible for some asinine reason that there's not 24 watts getting to the power supply through the, or to the GPU through the PCI and whatnot. But if this thing fires up and it plays an image, then I'm going to forego this for the time being. But I need to make sure that's the case before I, well, try and find the actual bracket for this thing and try and clean this thing up. I've yet to even install the 1TB NVMe drive yet because, again, I don't know if it'll fire up or not. Alright, let's see if it does anything. It needs that stupid little adapter? Fucking Dell, why are you this stupid? Okay. Alright, a little more time has passed. I found the little bracket and I got the little adapter installed. This time around, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull all my little monitors out before I actually start plugging this thing into my main, because if this thing doesn't work still, I want to be able to diagnose it. Alright, got an image. We're good to go. So the next step is to pull the 1TB drive out of my current Thieves computer, dump it into here, and see what happens. Alright, got it back together. Did a little bit more cable management. I got my 1TB boot drive installed. More than likely what's going to happen is I'm going to have to reinstall Windows. But there's a rare chance after the multiple blue screens that it does, that it actually posts. So, or boots into Windows. So with that said, let's see what it does just for the giggles. I'll be surprised if it doesn't blue screen on the first boot. It's going to, because it's going from an AMD rig back to an Intel rig, or to an Intel rig. The only thing that's really the same is the video card. At least Windows is able to detect that it's a whole new system. Alright, just turned off. I need to go into Windows or to the BIOS of this thing and tell it to boot directly to the NVMe drive, but let's see what it does. Voila be, it did not blue screen once. That's honestly very impressive. So with that said, now I get to see what CCs will run like on this thing, because, well, it still has everything installed. It's just running Intel instead of AMD. Alright, quick little update. It's installing the support assist completely fine. I uninstalled all the AMD bullcrap. So once this is all done, I'll be able to load up the Sea of Thieves and see how it performs. I am expecting an impact, but I don't know how much of a reduction in performance I'm going to be getting. Again, it is an i7 700K, and I think is still a very reputable processor to this day, but I'm about to wait and I'm about to find out in a little bit. All right, to at least have some apples comparison, I'm going to go back to Port Merrick and we're going to see what the frame rates and whatnot are like. With that said, the utilization is definitely a little higher on the CPU end, but it's not, from the looks of it, completely bottlenecking the 3070. So I'm already getting 100 or so FPS right here, which is perfectly fine. So I'll go to Port Merrick and come back. Scratch that. I'm going to do this base game for it. I am really close to finally getting a captain boat again, and I just want to see what the frame rates are like, and it's literally right next door. And of course, someone has to be at the fort, so I have to get my old headset and whatnot so I can actually communicate or, well, be able to record a video if by any chance these guys are in fact cheaters. Unfortunately, it's how schizo I have to be in this game, and it freaking sucks. Alright, quick tangent. I'm on the sea again. And that little modular cable I think I showed at the beginning of the video somewhere in the video, that cable is actually official. That's an official cable. That's no stupid adapter. What the actual heck, Dell? Well, it is definitely starting to turn itself into a hot box. With that said, I decided to leave the session because, well, I didn't feel like messing with that guy. With that said, new port. Frame rates are relatively fine. One thing I will probably end up doing is I will end up, at the very least, changing out the thermal paste, because the thermal paste I'm currently using for the processor is kind of on the weak side. And yeah, but again, it's holding just fine. I don't like these temperatures, but these are the temperatures of an Alienware, and there ain't really much I can do about it. Alright, some time has passed, and now I'm at Port Merrick, and so far the frame rates seem to be just a little bit more higher than my AMD build. But then again, I'm outside. I need to actually get inside Port Merrick, but first I'm going to deal with these. Alright, back in the general spawn point. With that said, about 90 or so frame rate, or